Lamplight presents A Flower That's Free, Part 2, by Sarah Harrison, narrated by Gabrielle Glaister. Part 2, 1939 to 41. Chapter 11. Kate crawled through the small door of the hut on her hands and knees. The hut was made of corrugated iron, like a makeshift oven, and just ahead of her the fire snarled and clamoured in the enclosed space. The heat was intense. She'd been ordered to put on a pair of men's overalls over her own shirt and trousers, and a pair of Wellington boots instead of the plimsolls she'd been wearing. Both were several sizes too large, and she felt heavy and awkward. To add to her discomfort, the dilapidated tweed fishing hat, which she had borrowed from Aubrey for just this purpose, and into which she had stuffed her hair, kept slipping over her already streaming eyes. "Push on!" She scrambled forward. As she drew nearer the shuddering red tentacles of the fire, the skin of her face felt as if it were being flayed from her skull. Though she knew the building to be no more than a few yards across, she could not see the far side for the thick smoke. She paused, shaking her head like an animal. "Get a move on! You can't hang about!" Stung, she crawled forward again. There was hardly any air now. When she gasped and gulped, it was to swallow a scorching torrent of unfriendly smoke. "On your feet! Stand up!" She could no longer tell where the voice was coming from. She was completely disorientated. Shambling and bear-like in her heavy clothes, she staggered to her feet, and at once the heat was even fiercer. She held up her arms in front of her as if to ward it off. "All right, on your way, let's be having you." Where? She thought. Where do I go? Run! Double quick! She lurched forward, and as she did so, a hand reached through the smoke and yanked the sleeve of her overalls. Following the pull, she was suddenly bursting through a tiny narrow doorway, barking her elbows painfully on the sides. She coughed violently, gulping and snatching at the soft, fresh September air. She raised her hands to rub her smarting eyes, but was restrained. A firm woman's voice said, "Don't do that, my dear. Your hands are all gritty. Here." A cool, damp sponge was pressed into her right hand. Gratefully, she dragged off the tweed hat and applied the sponge to her eyes, face, and neck, squeezing little rivulets of water over her scorched skin. When she'd finished and could see, she noticed that the sponge was completely black. Behind her, she heard a great hiss like a steam engine, as the fire was doused with a bucket of water. It had only...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?